Hi there, and welcome to this module. Thank you very much for watching. In this module, we're going to talk about stairs terminology, specifically as it relates to the Stairs Wizard in Inspirenet Mobile. So the purpose of this presentation is to prepare the learner, that would be you, with the vocabulary that's used in the new Stairs Wizard in the Inspirenet Mobile estimating tablet. So we're going to go through basic stair construction, tread types, stair types, and install types. Now, if you are already familiar with this vocabulary, feel free to skip to the end and jump right into the way that the Stairs Wizard is used in the tablet. If you are not familiar with this vocabulary, then I ask you to hang out with me for a few minutes as we walk through this. We're going to go through some basic construction vocabulary like stringers, treads, risers, skirt boards. What is a flight? What is a landing? A lot of these are very obvious. They're part of our normal vocabulary. Tread types. Some of these are not part of our normal tread type, our normal vocabulary. So what does it mean to be a box staircase versus a single or double? What does it look like? What is a starter tread? Stair types. What does it mean to be straight, curved, diagonal? And you may have heard these. You may have heard these descriptions under different names in the past. Again, the reason for this video is to make sure that we're consistent with the vocabulary between what you're trying to communicate in the tablet versus what the tablet is expecting from you. Install types. What does it mean to do carpet on the stairs, to upholster carpet on the stairs? A little bit different. Stair treads, stair retreads, flush nosing, and overlap nosing. So all of this is vocabulary that you're going to see in Inspirenet Mobile. So let's dive in. Basic construction. So when you think about a set of stairs, this is typically the way that stairs are built. In a residence, there's something called a stringer that is the base foundation for a staircase. Stringers are normally made by a big piece of lumber that gets cut into this sawtooth configuration. And you can see that on top of this stringer, the part that we walk on, the horizontal part, is what's called the tread. The riser is the vertical part. There's typically no load. There's no structural load on the risers. That's why sometimes you will see staircases that don't have risers, that just are open. All of the weight of the user goes on the tread. The riser really doesn't carry any weight. It's just there to box everything in. Stringers, as I said, these are structural stringers, and you will sometimes see the stringer on the side, sometimes you won't. The ones that run down the middle of the staircase, of course, you can't see them, but they serve a fundamental purpose in just holding people up as they walk up and down the stairs. And then, of course, from time to time, you may have a stair landing. So here we have our treads, we have our risers, we have a stair landing as this staircase goes up and turns around the bend. So this is just a basic stair construction. Now let's talk a little bit about tread types. It is possible to have something called a boxed staircase. What does that mean? That means that your tread is boxed on both ends. It is unfinished on both ends, and it is boxed in. What does this look like in real life? Well, in real life, a set of stairs might look like this. And you'll notice that both ends, if you imagine for a moment, if you could sort of see the side of that board, both ends of that stair tread are not finished. There's no need to finish them. There's no need to make them look pretty because they're going to be hidden by this skirt board that's on the side. Now, one of the dangers in vocabulary is that in different parts of the country, in different regions, people use different language to mean the same thing. I have heard this board called a stringer. I've heard it called a skirt board. I think the more proper terminology for it is a skirt board because it's a piece of trim. Stringers tend to be the construction piece that's underneath the stair treads. However, if you hear somebody talk about the finished stringer that's on the side of the staircase, that's what they're talking about, is this board. In a typical house, in a typical room, you might have baseboards going around the wall. This is essentially like a baseboard for your stairs. But we don't call it a baseboard. It's typically called a stringer or a trim skirt board. Box stairs, like I said, it simply means that the staircase is unfinished. The treads are unfinished on either side. This staircase is also boxed. So even though it goes up and it has a little bit of a turn, even though it's open over here on the side, you know, a realtor might look at this and say, this is an open staircase. Well, it is from a decorative standpoint, but from a tread standpoint, if you're looking at this from a flooring standpoint, these treads at the bottom, they're boxed. They're boxed on both sides. Here's another example. In this case, a realtor would absolutely say this is a very open staircase, especially these first four or five treads. It is from a visual standpoint, but if you're looking specifically at the tread, I like to say if you're a little ant and you walk across the side of this tread, you hit your head on the board and you turn around and walk back the other way, you're going to hit your head on the next board. This is what's considered boxed, even though you've got this fancy railing and all this stuff. At the end of the day, this is a boxed staircase. All right, well, what does it look like if it's open on one side? So again, there's different terminology that gets used here, but in this case, this is what would be considered a left return, or upholstered on the left side or open on the left side. What does that mean exactly? Well, that means that the left side, that edge on the left side of the stair, that you can see the finished edge. So it has to be finished. It has to look pretty. It has to be where the customer can take a look at that. We say left because from a stairs perspective, you're always looking at a staircase from the bottom, not from the top. So in this case, if I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs, I'm going to look at the left side. That left side is open. And again, depending on regions of the country and what different people say around you, some people may call this, it's obviously boxed on one side, but some people may say this has a left return. Some people will say it's upholstered on the left side. That doesn't make any sense when you're looking at hardwood, but if there was carpet here, the installer would actually have to upholster the carpet around those balusters. And that's why sometimes you'll hear people call this upholstered on the left side. Some people may say it's open on the left side or finished on the left side. All of these are correct. It's just different ways of saying the same thing. Well, what if it's on the right side? Same thing. This staircase is open on the right side. Again, if I'm looking at it from the bottom, it's open on the right. I turn the corner, I keep going up, it's still open on the right. You might say it's finished on the right. You might say it's a right return. Now, granted, this staircase doesn't have a lot in the way of finishing on the right-hand side, just because it's a very modern-looking staircase. But nevertheless, we would still consider this finished on the right side, or it would have a right return. You might have a staircase that has a double return. Okay, so it's finished on both sides. Great. Again, same type of terminology. You might hear people call it double return, or upholstered on both sides, or open on both sides, or finished on both sides. This staircase at the bottom has a double return, or it's finished on both sides. You can see these bottom steps. They're open to the environment on the bottom. When we get to this stair, it's open for most of the way, and then it turns and it's boxed in here. So an installer simply had to make a little cut to put that in. And these top steps simply have a right return. That's also common to see a staircase that has multiple things going on. What about starter steps? Well, you'll run into a couple of different types of starter steps. A single starter step is just single on one side. So it's rounded off on one side, it's squared off on the other. So in this case, this starter step is boxed on one end and it's finished on the other end. I would consider that a single starter step. A double starter step, it's rounded on both sides. So you look at a staircase like this. Here we've got, it's boxed, even if it looks wide open. It's a simple, very, very simple boxed staircase that goes up with a double starter step at the bottom. Let's think about a couple of different stair types. So this is language that you're going to see in the tablet. Straight, the treads are all rectangular. So if I look at this staircase, those treads, I don't think anybody would argue with me that this is a straight staircase. It just goes straight up. And every one of those treads is a rectangle. This staircase, you'll notice we've gone up and then there's a landing and we go up again. This is probably a hallway, but then there's another step and a landing and more that go up. This would still be considered a straight staircase. Even if a staircase has a landing, that's fine. You might walk up 6 steps, there's a landing, turn right, there's another 7 steps to walk up to the top. The fact that it has a landing and your body turns doesn't change the fact that the stairs themselves, the treads themselves are straight. They're simply rectangular. Contrast this with a curved tread. A curved tread simply means that your tread has a pie shape to it. It might be a straight cut. It might actually be a curved cut. It doesn't matter. But you'll notice that the inside is always narrower than the outside. So how are we going to treat this in the tablet when we're measuring this, when we're estimating this? You're simply going to measure the widest and the deepest part. So if I were measuring this staircase, I would measure the widest part here, and I would measure the deepest part here. If I ordered a tread that was rectangular in shape, a perfect rectangle that was this wide and this deep, the installer on site is going to cut it to fit. So it's not really a problem for the installer to make that cut. It's a very complicated thing for you to try to order a stair that's exactly that cut. Instead, you're better off to order a rectangular step, make sure it's big enough to do the job, and let the installer cut it on site. Same thing with these, these pie shapes that are going up this curved step. To try to get each one of those exactly cut and shipped in would be a nightmare. But if you ordered them as a rectangle and let your installer cut them on site, beautiful. One other type of stair tread that we'll talk about is a diagonal stair. So by diagonal, what we mean is that the treads flare out. They might flare out at the top, they might flare out at the bottom. In this case, the treads flare out at the bottom. So the bottom steps are wider than the top steps. Never mind the starter step for a moment. You can see that this bottom tread is really, really wide. And then we've got one that's a little bit narrower, and another one that's a little bit narrower, and another one that's a little bit narrower. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like 6 steps that make this diagonal pyramid shape. And then we get into just a straight tread going up from there. These are all straight treads. However, each tread is a different length or a different width. So that's something to take into consideration. This is a very interesting staircase. You've got a double starter tread at the bottom. You've got your rectangular shaped straight treads that are open on both ends. They're finished on both ends, and it's a diagonal shape. So there's a lot going on with this. Let's think about install types. Carpet on the stairs is pretty straightforward. This happens to be a full wrap design where the nose gets wrapped all the way around. This is what would be considered upholstered. So you'll notice that the carpet has been upholstered around each one of these balusters. This is what's meant by upholstered. The installer had to cut the carpet to get it around there, and then had to put the carpet back together on the other side. And when an installer does a great job with that, it makes it look like you took the balusters off and put them back on afterwards. This installer did a particularly good job. You can't tell that carpet was ever cut. You'll never know it. So you might have just a straight staircase where your installer is, doing a box stair, or you might have one that's upholstered on one side. And when it comes to hard surface, so LVP, laminate, hardwood, let's take a look at wood treads. Stair treads, when someone's talking about a stair tread, they're typically talking about a solid wood construction. Solid wood construction, 1-inch standard thickness. This is very typical in new construction. This is a structural member. So if I had a stringer on one side, a stringer on the other side, maybe even a stringer in the middle, somebody can walk on this with no fear. This is a solid new construction. I'm building a staircase from scratch. Stair retreads are almost half that thickness. So you look, stair retreads are typically 5/8 of an inch thick. It's much, much thinner. They are solid wood construction, but because they're thinner, they're typically used in remodeling. Well, how can I use this in remodeling if I need this? Well, because this ends up getting put on top of the existing tread. So let's say you had carpet on a staircase and you pull the carpet off. You're not going to pull the wood up that's underneath it. You're simply going to take a retread and put on top of the existing tread. So these don't have to be as thick. They would simply get glued down and you're ready to rock and roll. Wood retreads can be ordered pre-finished or unfinished from a secondary market. By secondary market, I mean not the manufacturer of the hardwood. So as an example, StairTech is one company that makes retreads. Artistic Finishes is another company that makes retreads. And most of the time, they have a database of color options that if you tell them that you've got a particular hardwood floor from a particular manufacturer in a particular color, they can match that floor and make it look just like it came from the factory. or you can get it unfinished and you can have your installer finish it in place and try to match whatever colors on the floor. There's also LVP treads. So Cali floors, Shaw floors, most of the big LVP manufacturers make Happy Feet make stair treads. It is a full tread piece, so you're not working with individual boards on the staircase. It is a full stair tread that's sold by the LVP manufacturer. So you typically don't find these on the secondary market. You typically buy these from the same company that you bought the LVP from. All right, one final note, one final piece of vocabulary. Flush stair nosings versus overlap stair nosings. So flush stair nose means that it's the same thickness as the floor. This is normally the case when it comes to let's say a traditional 3/4 inch hardwood floor. You can get flush stair nosings that are same thickness, they're still 3/4 of an inch. You would buy them from the same manufacturer that you're buying your hardwood from. These are typically wood, and they're typically just 3/4 of an inch thick. There is something called an overlap stair nose. Overlap stair nose, you can get any type. Now, I know the graphic here shows a vinyl floor, but that might be a laminate floor. It might be an engineered hardwood. It might be a vinyl floor. Overlap stair nose, it does exactly what it sounds like. It laps over the edge of that floor, and then it's connected. Now, in both of these cases, these noses must be properly secured in order to avoid trip hazards. What will typically happen, especially with overlap stair noses, is as weight from the user gets applied to the edge of the stair nose over and over and over again, it loosens up the bond of the adhesive, and many times you'll find these stair noses coming off. So it is typically recommended that nosings, whether it's flush stair noses or overlap stair noses, it's typically recommended to use these on landings or at the top of the stairs. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, because there are a ton of franchisees. This is common practice in the industry to use these overlap stair nosings on every tread. It is not recommended to be done that way. And the reason it's not recommended to be done that way is, just as I said, this can create a trip hazard over time. However, I know that it's common practice. I know that there's people that do this every day, and most people have never had a problem with it. So this presentation is not really meant to debate the benefits or the costs or the pros and cons of overlap nosings. The purpose of this presentation is really just to expose you to this vocabulary, so that when you go into the tablet, if you as a business owner, if you as a design associate, if you choose to use overlap stair nose, it's available in the tablet now. But understand the risk that you take when you do that. That's all. Again, this isn't meant to judge anyone for whatever construction technique they use. If you got an installer that can do this very, very successfully and you don't have a problem with it, knock yourself out. The point is that this vocabulary is now available in the Stair Wizard in the tablet, and you can choose it if you want to. So thank you for your attention. I appreciate you working through this. If there's something that you question, you can always go back and rewatch. And I look forward to working with you in the next video.